In most countries in the world, choosing a profession begins with the question, what do you like to do? Or, what are you good at? Or even, how much do you want to earn? In North Korea, such questions do not exist. There is no choice of profession here. There is assignment. The state decides who you will become, and it does not do this randomly or even on the basis of your abilities. It does it on the basis of your great-grandfather's file. A system that classifies every citizen from birth according to the degree of loyalty to the Kim dynasty, and on that basis assigns each person a life path from cradle to grave. This system is called Songbun, which is literally translated as constituent. Because in the eyes of the North Korean state, every person is simply a collection of components, and they decide who that person will become. To truly understand professions in North Korea, one must first understand this mechanism, and only then look at what everyday life looks like behind every job position in the most closed-off country on earth. Kim Il-sung created the Songbun system in 1958 as a tool of political control over society. Every North Korean citizen over the age of 17 has a personal file, updated regularly by officials of the Ministry of Public Security. This file traces the family history back 3 generations. Whether the great-grandfather fought alongside Kim Il-sung during the Japanese occupation, whether he was a landowner, a merchant, a religious practitioner, or whether someone in the family fled south. Based on these data, every citizen is assigned to one of 3 classes. The core class, comprising 28% of society, made up of loyal working families, revolutionaries, and peasants. The wavering class, accounting for 45% of the population, and the hostile class, comprising 27% of citizens considered politically unreliable because of their ancestors' pasts. These 3 classes are further divided into 51 subcategories, and since 2020, after a reform ordered by Kim Jong-un, the system has been reorganized toward 12 categories. Data for each of the millions of citizens is now collected and updated in a digital system, accessible from any Ministry of Public Security terminal at the provincial and county level. It is from this file, not from a conversation about dreams and passions, that every career decision is made. The most widespread profession in North Korea, the one performed by the largest share of the adult population, is farmer, or more precisely, agricultural cooperative worker. It is estimated that between 35 and 40% of the country's entire workforce works in agriculture. Agricultural cooperatives are a state creation. The land, machinery, and harvest formally belong to the collective, meaning de facto to the state. Work is done by hand because agricultural machinery is chronically lacking. Agricultural workers lift, dig, plant, and harvest to the rhythm of central plans that sometimes have as much to do with the biological reality of crops as ideology has to do with agronomy. A farmer's monthly state salary amounts to between $1 and $2 at the informal exchange rate, a sum so low that it is hard even to regard it as pay. Since the early 1990s, when the central food distribution system completely collapsed, farmers have survived solely thanks to the possibility of cultivating the so-called sotoji plots, small private patches of land on mountain slopes, formerly illegal but tolerated out of necessity. 16 of the 25 million citizens depend on grain rations produced by the cooperatives, showing how crucial a role this most basic profession plays in the entire system. Almost as common is the soldier, a profession that in North Korea is more of an obligation than a choice. North Korea has the 4th largest active army in the world, numbering 1,280,000 soldiers in regular service. 1 in every 25 citizens wears a uniform. Military service for men is compulsory and lasts from 5 to 7 years. But this is where the specificity begins, one you will not find in any other army in the world. After completing actual service, a soldier spends several more years in factories, on construction sites, and in infrastructure projects controlled by the army, because the Korean People's Army is simultaneously the country's largest employer and largest public works contractor. Soldiers build roads, erect monuments, cultivate the fields of army farms, and work in army mines. The so-called Builders Brigade, made up of conscripts, constructed part of Pyongyang's new districts, including the flagship buildings of the Hwasong district. After completing the full period of civilian military service, lasting a total of 6 to 10 years, a former soldier receives a reward in the form of a special identity document granting greater freedom of movement, and his songbon may be raised by one class, making military service one of the few real paths of social advancement available to the lower class. The third pillar of the workforce is the miner. North Korea has some of the largest mineral deposits in the world: coal, magnesite, zinc, iron, and rare metals. The value of the resources in the ground is estimated at trillions of dollars. The problem is that they are extracted under conditions that in any other country in the world would result in the immediate closure of the mine. Mines operate on production quotas. Each brigade must extract a specified amount of ore, regardless of safety, machinery condition, or the number of accidents. Miners' lamps often do not work. Ventilation is often makeshift. First aid doctors are rare. Defectors who worked in mines described routine accidents in which the victims were simply moved aside and left without medical help because stopping the production line threatened punishment for the entire brigade. The extracted raw material goes mainly to China, which for years was one of the key channels feeding the North Korean economy, before UN sanctions began to restrict this export. Teacher is a profession that in North Korea serves a function it serves nowhere else in the world. It is the official transmitter of ideology. From the first grade of primary school, every teacher is required to teach content approved by the apparatus of the Workers' Party Central Committee. In the school curriculum, subjects such as the revolutionary activities of Kim Il-sung, the revolutionary activities of Kim Jong-il, and the revolutionary activities of Kim Jong-un regularly return throughout the academic year, where students learn, among other things, that the leader won a yacht race at the age of 9. In 1990, teachers across the country were given a top-down obligation to learn to play the accordion, an instrument with a peculiar status in North Korea, where there is supposedly 1 2/10 accordions per resident, and which officially bears the title of folk instrument. This requirement is said to remain in force to this day. Every academic paper, regardless of the field, whether the humanities or the hard sciences, must contain at least one quotation from a member of the Kim family, which makes every research article at the same time an act of political profession of faith. Doctor is, in North Korea, a fascinating profession from a sociological point of view because it perfectly illustrates the gap between what is official and what is real. The healthcare system is on paper free and universally available, one of the foundations of socialist propaganda. In reality, it is largely devastated. World Health Organization estimates from the turn of the previous decade indicated that the country spent the equivalent of $1 per person per year on healthcare. Humanitarian organizations documented surgeries performed without anesthesia and using non-sterile instruments. Access to medication depends on songbon status and the contents of one's pockets. Doctors in the official system earn state salaries that are not enough to live on. As a result, a parallel system has developed. Patients pay doctors directly, in cash or kind, for every service. Defectors reported that the standard rate for a visit was a few kilograms of rice or a pack of cigarettes. In this system, being a doctor means simultaneously being a state official and a private entrepreneur operating outside any law. Two roles that in North Korea are mutually contradictory, yet at the same time absolutely necessary for survival. Party official is the most desirable profession in the entire social hierarchy. Membership in the Workers' Party of Korea and obtaining a position within its structures opens the door to everything valuable in North Korea. Housing in Pyongyang, access to special shops with imported goods, higher quality food rations, and immunity from ordinary police checks. But you do not enter the party by submitting an application. You enter through songbon. Only core citizens with an impeccable family background are considered as candidates. And through years of loyalty, loyal service in youth organizations, such as the Kim Il-sung Youth League, through which most adult North Koreans passed, beginning at the age of 14. The party is estimated to have between 3 and 3.5 million members out of 25 million citizens, and it is the only legal power structure in the country. Every factory, cooperative, school, and hospital has its own party secretary, who technically is the most important person in that place, more important than the director or chief doctor. His job is to make sure ideology is observed, report deviations, and organize mandatory self-criticism sessions in which workers publicly confess their misdeeds and promise improvement. Foreign currency operator is a profession that arose only when North Korea stopped being the country it wanted to be, when the famine of the 1990s shattered the central distribution system and forced millions of people to find their own ways to survive. Foreign currency earning organizations, called Wabigdae in Korean, began to emerge in the early 2000s at the initiative of the state itself as a way to generate hard currency outside the official budget. Their employees deal with the export of natural resources, handling foreign contracts, and acquiring foreign exchange, which then goes directly to Office 39, the secret financial agency of the Kim dynasty. Tour guide is a profession that at first glance seems exotic in a country as tightly sealed as North Korea. And yet it exists. Every year the country is visited by between 4,000 and 6,000 Western tourists, and by tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of visitors from China. Each of them must move only with an assigned guide, who is at once chaperone, censor, and informant. The guide not only shows the country in the proper light, he makes sure no tourist talks to random passers-by, photographs poverty, or strays from the approved route. Tour guides undergo years of selection, knowledge of English or Chinese, an excellent songbun, ideological training, and years of service in the propaganda apparatus are the absolute minimum. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and click on the next episode.